Thomas, I am extremely excited to have this interview with you, especially given your expertise in this very niche but important area in terms of football, and one that even myself, I didn't consider the depth of it until I came across your work. So I'm really excited to speak with you and obviously the experience that you've had as well. I think that the most obvious question to ask initially is, what motivated you to pursue a specialism in throw-ins?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Temisan. Yes, I started already very early with a passion for throw-ins. I was like 10 years old or so in the mid 80s, and I saw my big cousins Ben and Johnny do long throw-ins. So I thought they were really cool. They were like, I think 5, 8 years older than me. So,
Hmm.
and often you're looking up to people older than you and be inspired. So already from an early age, I was really, I fell in love with throw-ins, you can say that. And then I was a quite good football player, played in the best U19 league in Denmark.
Hmm.
Uh, Playing against, for example, Thomas Gravesen, who later played for Real
Yes,
Madrid and Danish national
yes,
team, Celtics
yes.
Hamburg, has and so. And 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 even though I was a good football player, I also had like some special weapons, and one weapon was the long throw-ins. I was really good
Hmm.
at that because I trained a lot, but also I was really fast. So in the mid '90s, I changed to athletics and came on the Danish national team. I was there for 6 years,
Wow.
running 100, 200, 4 meters in relays. And in that period, I took a lot of knowledge from athletics, not only the running, but also the throwing, like javelin throw, hammer
Yeah.
throw, shot put, and so on and so on. And that gave me a lot of knowledge there around movements. Then in 2002, I came on the Danish national bobsleigh team and was there for 4 years from 2002 to 2006. And in the middle of that bobsleigh period, we were playing an indoor football match against a German bobsleigh team. And the reason why we did that was we had a cooperation with the Germans. So
Hmm.
we trained with them daily. And then we played in like this indoor facility, 40 meters long, 20 meters wide. And then I threw just a ball from one end to the other. And they were like really impressed. Wow, how could you do this? And then I thought, wow, if I can make a good throw in, can't I teach players to do it? So I said to my teammates, "Hey, I want to be a throwing coach," and they were really supportive. And you know, if people are not supportive around you, some of those small ideas they're like
Yeah.
like already
Yeah.
dead from the start, but they were supportive. And then I thought I could find after that bobsleigh trip a book on my in my local library about throw-ins, but there was no books, nothing on the internet. So I used approximately 6 months to prepare a throwing course. And in October 2004, I could have been starting with a youth amateur team, but I
Hmm.
had the courage to ask a local Superliga team from Denmark called Viborg. And they said yes. They scored a lot of goals on throw-ins, improved their throw-ins a lot, had the best placement in the club's history that season. So, so yes, to make a really long story quite short, then I started with my first professional team as a throwing coach in October 2004. So now I've been doing this for the last 20 years.
Amazing, amazing. I love that how you crossed over different sports, started from how you were as a player, noticed it as a skill yourself, and then crossed over, to athletics and to bobsleighing. And so along the process, how did you go from, because with coaching you do, UA level one, UEFA C, UEFA B. How did you start to increase, the levels? How did you progress to make sure that you were developing how you can coach throw-ins?
I will, and this might surprise a lot of people, but I haven't taken even 1 minute of football education. I have no courses. So and some might think, wow, but you need that to help the best teams in the world. No, I don't,
Mm,
because I understand football, I understand movements, I understand space, I understand pressure, I understand time. And
mm.
then a lot of the knowledge I've been using, you can't learn that in football education. I've been taking a lot of knowledge from for example, basketball. I've been playing basketball myself too,
Yes.
seeing a lot of NBA. Last year in March 2023, I visited the Boston Celtics training facility. So most of the knowledge I take in my throwing coaching is not from football, it's from many other places. And not only
That's
basketball,
very
it's
interesting.
also from art, from Roman warfare, from flock of birds and their awareness. And so
Talk
back
more
to,
about that because that's really interesting. Because this is blowing my mind already. So,
yeah,
Roman warfare. Can you
yeah,
explain that a little bit more, please?
yeah. The Roman army was like quite successful, like we know for many several hundred years.
Hmm.
And one of the reasons why they were successful was because they were structuring their army really well. I think we can all agree on that war is terrible. We don't want to see that, no
Yeah,
matter if
yeah.
it's Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, and no matter where it is. But one of the reasons why they were successful, the Roman army, was that they were really good at structuring their armies.
Hmm.
And at that time, many hundred years, several hundred years ago, maybe it was two armies of 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 each. And at one stage of history, in the front of the armies, they had some bowers,
Hmm.
and they were shooting arrows, and they were really good at shooting arrows. And when they've been shooting their arrows, then they had to run away
Hmm.
behind the other warriors because they were not good at fighting. They were good at shooting arrows. And in most of the other armies, when the bows have shot the arrows, they were just like terrified.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to be killed, and people were falling over each other, and so. And you can say, okay, it's just people falling over each other, and so no, that's not an efficient army, because if you're lying on the floor or knocking some of your war mates over, you don't have an efficient army. So
No.
what the Romans did, they had like structured movements in their army. So when the bows was finished, they made some movements. So they had like some columns where they could run through without any, interference. So it
Mm,
meant that one of the probably many reasons why the Roman army was successful was because it was really efficient. And when I first learned about that, I thought with my throwing coaching, how can we move not only individually, because yeah, you can create space individually, but not much. But how can we do different patterns also in two, three, four, five players at a time?
mm,
So this is common understanding of space and movements is really, really important. I use a lot of that. And
yeah.
then again, for example, the flock of birds, we have a thing in Denmark called the black sun, and it's like 10,000, 100,000, sometimes a million starlings, small starlings. They're actually at the Danish southwest coast now, also in the
Okay.
spring too. And they're flying in fantastic formations. And it's really beautiful because it's also sunset and sunrise.
Hmm.
But it's not to make it beautiful for us humans. It's because the individual bird shouldn't be isolated, because if it's isolated, it's easier for the predator bird to take it.
Hmm.
So scientists found out that these small starlings, they are navigating because they couldn't understand how can they fly in these formations. Each
Mm.
starling is navigating towards the nearest seven birds. So you have the starling here, then you have a bird here, two here, two here, two here.
Oh,
And that's the
wow.
reason why. So this is about scanning and about awareness. And when I
Yep.
saw that research, I was digging much, much deeper into how can we use scanning and awareness when we have a throw in, not only your teammates, but also scanning of the opponents, what I call um, the opponent's defending pattern. So ODP. So again, back to your question. I haven't taken any football education at all, not even 1 minute. But I've been saying, of course, I see a lot of football. Of course, I do that. But most of my knowledge, I've
Mm.
actually been taking that from either other sports or other parts of the world. Research, for example.
Fantastic. So what are the mechanics of a high quality throw-in then?
Yeah, before I go into that, it's really important for me to say that I'm working with the long, fast, and clever throw-in, and maybe we come into that. But if we're talking about the long throw-in mechanics,
Hmm.
then I'll say I have 30 different technical parameters, and I use video analysis. Most of my players, they improve 5 to 10 meters if I coach them several times, some up to 15 meters. Just to
That's
give them an
massive.
example,
That's
yeah,
massive, Thomas. 5 meters is a long distance. 10 meters, that's it's
yeah,
um more than half the 18-yard area in terms of its
yeah.
length. So it's quite significant.
Yeah, so let me just give an example here from Wednesday last week where I coached FC Midtjylland. I've been coaching him for a period, but I had a player who was in my training for the first time. I only coached him and a couple of others 15 minutes. He started with 26 meters in 10, and so that's like medium. It's
Hmm.
not bad, but it's only medium, ordinary. And then in those 15 minutes, he improved to 33.90 meters. So almost
Wow.
8 meters in 15 minutes of technical coaching. So he went from ordinary to world class. And you can use that long throwing not only if you are that kind of team who throws, close to the opponent's goals, but you can
Hmm.
also use a longer throwing for better counterattack options, but also to improve your throwing area. The longer you can throw, the more teammates you can throw to. So even if you're playing on a team who's not using long throw-ins, how can you say, as a direct set piece weapon, it's really useful. But this is how I do it. And of course, again, I'm using 30 different technical
Yeah.
parameters. It's really, even though I'm training a team, several players at the time, it's always individual based. Because I look at the video and so, but to cook those 30 different technical parameters down to three things, then it's like what I call the power position. You want to have a good position when you come to the line.
Hmm.
That's you say that's both like the distance between the feet, how your general body position is, how your hip is positioned,
Would it be
how the
standing
grip is.
still or moving? Because you see some players obviously move and throw. You see some stand still and throw. What's your
Yeah,
what's
yeah, yeah.
your suggestion?
Yeah, if you're standing still and throw, that's really bad. At least if you want to throw as far as possible.
Yeah.
But again, back to it, it's really important to have a good power position. Then it's also really important to transfer the energy over the line, and you have to do it the right way, because sometimes I've seen players go over the line, but with a bad power position, then it doesn't matter at all. So
Mm.
you want to transfer the energy, and then the third part is the running itself. And there's a lot of different things to work on with the running, both the speed, but also the intensity of the different steps. Also, some players are having like too long steps. Some players are having a jump that's too high in the end. Things like that. So, but all in all, I do that individually, and that's the reason why players I'm improving so much with my throwing coaching. But also,
Yeah.
also teams are scoring so much. And I'm both doing this, I can say, live in the clubs where I'm
Hmm.
coaching, but I'm also doing it in my online course. So this you can actually learn that no matter if you're just playing, how can you say, U19 in some country and you want to develop yourself, you can learn that if you are coaching an amateur team, and just want to teach your players that. So I just want to make my knowledge accessible for,
That is
of
brilliant.
course, coaches, but also players. Yeah.
And you recently had, in talking about your webinar, you recently had a webinar titled How to Win a Match with a Throw-in. Now, can throw-ins really have that much of an impact on the outcomes of games?
It's often I'm just telling the numbers, and then I think the question answer itself. So you're normally having 40 to 60 throw-ins in a match. Of course, you can see game there are fewer than 40 throw-ins, but I've also
Hmm.
seen games that are more than 60. I think that like the typical number is like 45, 50, and this number is depending on, of course, for example, the pressure of the teams and also the weather conditions. If it's a windy day,
Hmm.
there's more throw-ins and things like that. But you're having normally 40, 60 throw-ins in a match.
Is that
You are
per
you
team or just
no, no,
one in total?
two teams together, yeah, in total,
Okay, yeah.
and you're using approximately 20 minutes on throw-ins and throwing related situations. And then if you know that most teams are losing the ball in more than 50% of the occasions when they have a throw-in under pressure where the players are marked, then I think the question is answered. Does throw-ins mean a lot? Yes, it's has a gigantic meaning. The only reason why some people don't think that is because when you see a football match and a team is losing ball after a throw-in, the commentators are not saying anything at all
Mm.
because they lack the knowledge. Why did they lose it? If they had the knowledge, they could see, wow, that was really bad decision, no space. But the commentators not saying anything. So of course the fans or the people seeing it, they're not seeing it. But if you lose the ball in the middle of the pitch after a bad decision with your feet, or like, play it in a bad space, you'll say it immediately, wow, bad decision.
Hmm.
So I think this comes mostly down to lack of knowledge by commentators, lack of knowledge by coaches, and general lack of knowledge in the whole football world, also by fans around throw-ins. So throw-ins are not marginal gains. I heard some people say that too. Wow, I think
Hmm.
it's gigantic gains.
Yeah, if it's
It means
20
so lot.
minutes, yeah, as
Yeah.
many as when you start looking at it that way, that's quite a considerable amount of time on the pitch. And so, um, you've been part of 15 titles in international football as a throwing specialist. Would you say football is starting to wake up to the need for this specialist position?
Yeah, I'll say they're waking up, but sometimes they're also waking up in the wrong way. And what do I mean with that?
Mm,
First of all, I see some teams where they're putting more focus on the throw-ins, and I love that. And my biggest goal is not to win titles, is to change football. So that's good.
mm,
But I also see sometimes I think the throw-ins are going in the wrong direction, because we are having a lot of set piece coaches now in football, and I'm not a set piece coach.
hmm.
I'm only doing throw-ins. And I have a totally different approach to traditional set piece coaches. Traditional set piece coaches, they're normally experts in corner kicks, free kicks. And
Yes.
of course, they're important, but they're often having the same approach to throw ins as corner kicks and free kicks. And the challenge is, if you're having a throw in the middle of the pitch, you might have, if you probably have, if you take the ball fast, 15, 20 seconds of space creation time, and you can create probably 4, 6, 8, 10 different kinds of spaces if you're good at creating space and you can
Hmm.
decide one of those. But the challenge with many set piece coaches is that they're just setting something up like a corner kick and free kick. So I heard a lot of set piece coaches. They're saying, okay, we're trying either this or this in the middle zone. But the challenge with that is that this can be totally locked down because of the opponent's defending pattern, or the opponents can just mark it good. And then the players don't have any more options. And then we
Mm,
throw the ball into crowded spaces, things like that. So yes, I totally love that we are having those set piece coaches in football, but a lot of them are taking the wrong approach. So that's the reason many of the clubs I'm
yeah.
coaching, they already have for example, Brentford in this season, for example, FC Midtjylland, they already have a set piece coach. But most of them, they don't know much about throw-ins.
Yeah.
So again, I want to change throw-ins in football, not only in the pro game, but also in the amateur and youth game. Yeah.
So looking at coaching courses, because like you said, this educational piece, there are the set piece coaches, but you have coaching courses and throw-ins aren't covered in any type of detail. Why do you think it isn't part of coaching courses, especially knowing now the work that's been done by yourself over the last 20 years?
It's basically lack of knowledge again. I think most of the challenge we have in society, not only football, comes down to lack of knowledge. So for example, I've been helping the Finnish Federation, the Danish Federation, the Belgium Federation, the Mexican Federation. That's the ones I remember now,
Hmm.
and that was like mainly the pro license. But I think it's mainly because of a lack of knowledge. Because how should they teach it? And they don't know how to teach to make you do better throw-ins. Yeah, you
Mm.
can always say to like cliches, and so just throw faster, things like that. Throw it fast, but it says nothing. It doesn't make you a better thrower
You
if
hear
you.
that quite a lot. Okay, look, quickly get the ball,
Yeah,
throw it, we're
yeah.
gonna count it.
So
Yeah, you see that quite a lot.
yeah, so it's actually lack of knowledge again, and I
Yeah.
just want to help as many federations as possible to get that into their football education, because I think I've been coaching in, like, I don't know, 35 countries and so, and no matter what country I
Amazing.
go to, they say
Mm.
the same like you. We haven't learned anything about throw-ins at all. For example, let me just take this January this year. I was at in Anaheim to the United Soccer Coaches Convention
Yes.
in LA, and
Yeah.
there are around 8,000 coaches there, and so a lot of talks, a lot of things on the pitch, like two pictures, education, and so.
Hmm.
I didn't see anything at all around throw-ins. Not one single word, not one single minute anywhere. I followed this conference for many years, and there's been like hundreds of talks and things on the pitch, nothing around throw-ins. So it just surprised me because it's such a big part of the game. So and one thing is youth and amateur football where you play hockey. I know in some youth football you want to create the next big superstars,
Hmm.
and that's totally fine. But let's just take professional football. You're playing for billions of euros, pounds, dollars, and so. And how can you neglect such a big part of the game? It
Yeah,
should be so. So yes, back again to your question. It's it should be much bigger throw-ins in football. You should have much more focus on it in daily training, in coaching courses. Know everywhere. So that's my goal to change
yeah.
that.
That's brilliant, Thomas. And you've mentioned already the clubs that you've been able to work for, and of course, one of them, um, Liverpool, who of course won the league recently in the years, with Klopp. What was it like for you working with Klopp around this?
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was really good to work with Jürgen. Of course, I was a part of 7 titles together with Jürgen Klopp. Of course, the Champions League, Premier League, World Club
Yeah,
Championship, and cup titles, and so. But I think the best thing was to work in that work environment where people were sharing knowledge. People were really good at listening. I was able in those 5 years in Liverpool to do anything I want with the throwing coaching. Of course,
amazing.
I was in cooperation with the coaches,
Of course.
with the analysis people, with the physical coaches, and with the intensity of the training, different numbers of players, different minutes, and so. But I had the freedom to work with my knowledge. That's one of the most important things. No matter if you're in football, you're in a company, if you're in a school, that
Mm,
that
mm,
freedom to work, that lust, that willingness to share knowledge, give knowledge when you have something other can learn from, to get knowledge when you have a challenge. Of course, I know it's all about culture, but so that was a great satisfaction. And of course, the call from Jürgen was also my international breakthrough, or it gave me that. So since then, I've been coaching like 6, 8, 10 clubs every season. So yeah, and also not only Europe but also exotic places like, yeah,
mm.
Mexico. That's exotic for me. Yeah, the States. I just recently been in Japan with Kawasaki Frontale. That was also
Yes,
fantastic too. So it's been giving me so much. So
amazing.
I'm looking back at the years in Liverpool with happy memories.
And would you say there were any players particularly who took a liking to your work and said, "Yeah, I really want to focus on trying to develop this part of my game." Like a Trent Alexander-Arnold or Robertson or any other players.
I think it was actually all the players. Of course, Trent and Robo, they did the most of the throw-ins, even though we had the fast philosophy that the nearest is taking it.
Yep.
So it was also midfielders, central defenders, strikers who took it, but of course Robo and Trent the most. Um, but but for me, it was more like the whole team, the whole group bought into it because yes, you can have fantastic throwers who are making fantastic decisions and so, but if you want to have a really good throwing team, you have to have a lot of good team space creation. And all the
Mm,
players bought into that. But it was not only the attacking throw-ins, I'm also working with defending throw-ins. So how the coaches also bought into the defending defending throw-ins, when the opponent had a throw-in. And in the 5 seasons I was in Liverpool, we scored like 10 to 15 goals directly after throw-in situations, not the long one, but
yeah.
but
Yeah.
the fast and clever. And typically, every season, 3 to 4 of these goals were directly from the opponent's throw-ins, not like 30 seconds later. It
Mm,
was directly from the opponent's throw-ins. So we worked a lot with defending throw-ins. So you have to buy into this as a team. It's not enough yet that you're just coaching the throwers. So if
Hmm.
you do that, it's also a big mistake. I'm not saying you can never only coach the, the, the main throwers. Of course, you can do that with specific exercises,
Yeah.
improving throwing length and things like that. But you have to have the all team in it because if the players inside are not creating any space, you have a
It
tough
doesn't
job as a
matter.
thrower,
Yeah, yeah,
and you might
yeah,
just hurl it down the line like many teams
yeah.
does. So yeah.
And so you've done something very special, Thomas, which is you held the Guinness World Record for the longest football throw-in for a number of years. And what I'm really interested in is how did you mentally prepare to achieve something that very few people even attempt to do?
Yeah, you can say this is a really long story, so I try to make it really short because that's also the full story. You'll hear that in my talks and so. But I actually beat the world record with a flip throw in. So you have a run in, you jump down on the ball, make a flip land, and then throw the ball. And the
Wow.
challenge was that I was a non-gymnast, so I I used approximately 6 months to train with three different gymnast coaches. The last
Hmm.
one was the national women's gymnast coach in Denmark, and I could train in a gymnast facility. So that's like my first advice: get help from people who are specialists. A little bit like coaches should get help of me from me, or
Hmm.
players should get help from me, either live with visits or online. I had got help from gymnast coaches. So I had a world record attempt in 20th of August 2008 in the halftime break of the national match Denmark-Spain. I didn't beat the world record there. Then I had one in 2009 in the halftime break of Hertha Berlin, Wolfsburg at the Olympic Stadium in Berlin with 40,000 spectators. I didn't beat the world record there, but then in 2010, I beat the world record with a throw of 51.33 meters there. So I'll say to
Wow.
yeah, and you can see it on YouTube, my YouTube channel. It's quite yeah, so
I
it's
have to
quite
check that
long.
out. Yes.
Yeah, so just to cook it down, because I have a lot of
Yeah.
course things I'm telling about there, a lot of, but to cook this story down, you can say that what I really recommend people to do is be really good at getting help when you have a challenge, because a lot of people think, I have to work hard, I have to,
Mm,
hold on, hold out. Yes, of course you have to do that, but sometimes it's easier to get help from people who know something about this. So get help. Don't be too proud to get help. I
mm,
see a lot of people too proud to get help who are never reaching their goals. So that's the first advice in this little story here. The second advice in this little story is to give help. We know from science, we know from research that if you give help, you get a lot of energy. So you can both get that energy from, how can I say, single help in single situations, but you can also get it by helping people. For example, in these record attempts, I raised money for diabetes research. A thing called JDRF, Juvenile Diabetes
wonderful.
Research Foundation, because my grandpa, he died of diabetes related complications there. So it meant a lot to me. So because I was raising those money for that good cause, that meant a lot to me. I
Mm,
had like more energy. And of course, I had like 2.5 years non-gymnast try to learn the flip throwing. It's really hard. So of course, I had days where I got injured or struggled, but then, it's much easier to get through that if you have your, how can you say, your why, something that
you're
means a
why.
lot to you.
Agreed.
Don't,
Agreed.
hey, don't give up, man.
Yeah.
You're collecting money for people who have diabetes. You want to create that cure. So
Yeah.
that's my second advice to this small story about the world record is to give help, either single help, like just be kind,
Hmm.
give people a thing, give people a helping hand, or help something that means a lot to you. So you don't have to raise like 10,000 pounds like I did for diabetes research, but you can like say, wow, that's the kind of person I want to be, or I want to support this kind of thing. So
Mm.
yeah.
This has been truly insightful, Thomas. Thank you. And we're coming near the end here. Just a few more questions. And you mentioned it when you were doing the getting the world record that you had to push through injuries as well. Is there ways that players can injure themselves with the throw-in technique, or when they're also fatigued? Does that have an impact as well of potential injury when they're looking to take the throw-ins?
Yes, I'll say first of all, it's really important for me to say that when I'm coaching the players in the clubs, the long throwing, that's
Hmm.
not the flip throwing,
Of
and I'll
course,
only
yes.
yeah, I'll only recommend to do that if you're a really good gymnast. So if you ever want to try flip throwing, you have to be really good at flips without the ball first, because it's actually quite dangerous. So don't do that unless you're really good at gymnastics. And again, you can get help to that if you want to do that.
Yeah.
And then I'll say that generally I've never had like real injuries in my training, so it's not dangerous to do my let's say long throwing coaching. Um, and actually, I make the players throw more efficient. So
Mm.
if sometimes, let's say a player is getting sore in the lower back, for example,
Hmm.
it's often when he's just starting or she's just starting, it's often if they have a bad technique. So let's say, for example, they are loading from the side, the ball from the side, but
Oh,
then when they
yes.
come, the spine
Yeah.
is twisted and then you push in this direction. So actually bad technique can be can be a little
Yeah.
bad danger
Yeah.
to you. So actually I'll say that first of all with my coaching, the risk of anything is really, 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 really low. And actually, if you're doing my principles with the long throwing technique, you actually have a less chance. But like everything else, of course, if you've never done anything like several times and then you start to do
Mm.
it, no matter what you do, you can get a little bit sore in the lower back or in the shoulders, things like that. But I've never experienced something how can you say
Yeah.
serious. It's much more dangerous to do normal football
Untrained
training. Yeah, yeah,
throw-ins. Yes.
yeah.
So, what do you think then is the future for throw-ins in football?
Yeah, I just hope that I can spread my knowledge even more. Of course, both with my visits, but especially with my online courses. Because to be honest, we have to be honest again, it's not everyone who either can afford to get a visit from me or would. That's the way it is, even
Mm.
though I'm coaching really many places. So I think that that'll mainly be through my online courses. And of course it's best to get a visit from me because like yeah, of course I can help people much more there. And the second thing is that people can learn from my online course, and then the third thing is also give inspiration like from this interview or from my free resources or my webinars. And so you can say it's like everything else in life.
Yeah.
If you don't pay anything for resource, you can probably hopefully learn something, but you won't learn the most. If you pay a little bit, like you do with my online courses, you'll hopefully, when you do that in general, learn a lot. You do that in my online course, and if you pay a lot, like you do for my visits, then you learn much more. That's so so that's the way it is. So that's the way I want to spread my knowledge around throw-ins. Yeah.
Amazing. Thomas, I've got one final question for you. Bit of a surprise question here, and it's come from a previous guest, and it'll be interesting to see your thoughts on this. So the question is, when would you consider a player to be elite?
I think you can consider it in several ways, and I see it in several ways. Um, and I think that there's not one way to see it
Mm.
because there's also so a lot of people are saying, "Wow, give me that one definition." No, that's not the way life is. So you can say a player is elite if a player is really performing well, so scoring goals, making tackles, reaching a high level. So
Hmm.
that's like elite performance, but you also have like elite mindset, and I see some people who are like doing things individually that makes him or her much much better, but it's not affected by the things that they're told by directly by the coach, so they're not being forced to it. Let me give you a small example. I had a guy called Sargon from Austria. He came to me in I think like 2014 or 15. He
Hmm.
traveled all the way from Austria to Denmark to be coached individually by me. He started with a throw-in of 25 meters. Then here in Denmark, it was only one visit. He improved to 34, so 9 meters. Then we continued to work online. He wanted to learn more. They, with a cooperation, he improved to 40 meters. So all in
Wow.
all, he improved his long throw in from 25 meters to 40 meters, so 15 meters of improvement. And he could only do that because his mindset was elite.
Mm,
And I say that I think that's actually one of the big. And again, this is nothing about football here, but I've been doing the highest level in athletics. I've been doing the highest level in bobsleighing, like 10 years of national performance there.
hmm
And you can say that I see a lot of players in football who don't have elite mindset. They're just following, you know, the path that's been showing to them.
mm,
So there are there's you see much more elite mindset in sports like swimming, athletics, bobsleighing, and so because you're measured in everything, and you can see if I'm a tenth of a second slower, I can't be satisfied. So so again, yes, of course, I'm not saying there's no
yes,
individual elite
yes, yes.
mindset
I
in
understand.
football. I'm
Yeah.
just saying the amount of individuals who have elite mindset is much lower in football. There should be, again, there should be like thousands of players a year who were coming directly to me and saying, help me with improving my throw-ins, especially
Yeah.
fullbacks slash wingbacks, because it means so much. This guy who improved here this Wednesday from Midtjylland, 8 meters. Wow, how much does this mean for his game?
For the team.
And I've been
Yeah.
having many players, but so again, I if that was in athletics, like someone said, okay, if you this trainer he's been, let's say I'm a long jumper, and then you say, okay, this trainer has a training philosophy that make all his jumpers jump half a meter longer. That's like wow, ages, and that's even much less than I can prove the players
Mm,
throw-ins, also in percentages. Then everybody would go to him and say, "Wow, I have to get this knowledge." So so there is a gigantic potential of individual elite mindset in football. We don't have enough of that, and I'm not only talking about the players here. I'm also talking about the coaches. Every coach should come to me and say, "Wow, how can I learn from you?" I've seen that you've been part of 15 titles in international football. Only a very few coaches in history
have
has been
that.
part of so
Yeah.
many.
Yeah.
They should say, wow, how can I get your knowledge? And then of course it could be about the price, but but sometimes people, both players but also coaches, they're living in their own small bubble. Like, and I know you can't get help from everybody in every subject, but again, so back to your question, you can be elite performance, but that doesn't mean you have elite mindset, and there's a gigantic potential there in football.
Wonderful. Thomas, it has been an absolute pleasure being able to speak with you and delve into the details of what is a really important part of football around throw-ins. And thank you for the insights around just not just how players can improve in the mechanical aspect of it, but just their mindset and approach and the mindset and approach of coaches as well. And hopefully the work that you're doing will continue to spread globally. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.